You're listening to the Luminate series on the Forward Faster podcast, providing bite-sized insights for entrepreneurs in the optics, photonics, and imaging sector.
Hello, welcome to the Forward Faster podcast. Today we are thinking about how do you deal with the unexpected. Our guest today is Paul Drysch, and his company that he is the CEO of is PreAct. PreAct deals with what do you do before a car crash happens. My name is Damon Diehl, and I'm the Technology Program Manager here at Luminate. Luminate is the largest accelerator for optics, photonics, and imaging startups. Paul, I'm just going to jump in on my first question, which is, what is the problem you're trying to solve, and why is it important? You can say it better than I do.
So today's passive and active safety systems all either try to avoid a collision or respond post-collision, meaning like your airbags don't go off until actually well after the accident happens and so what we're trying to do is accurately predict an imminent collision so that various safety measures could be engaged prior to the collision, thus mitigating the injuries and deaths from car crashes.
So I think that covers your general approach to the problem. And what is your market advantage over other people in this field?
Good question. Today, we work in the area that's called near field sensing. So we only look out 20, 25 meters away from the car. What the kind of traditional sensors that are on cars today are standard RGB cameras, short-range radar, and ultrasonic sensors. All of those are pretty, I don't want to call them antiquated technologies, but they're very mature technologies. What we've done is developed a novel modulated wave time of flight imaging technology that provides a LiDAR-like point cloud and depth map, and but does it at a super low cost. I mean, we're orders of magnitude lower cost than LiDAR, and actually we can be less cost than the traditional sensors that are out there today as well.
So your particular advantage then is you have the lower cost, and then you have this fundamentally different operation that you're working with.
Correct. It's a much higher resolution and accuracy level than you would get from the sensors, near field sensors that are used today. We also have a very high frame rate, which means, how often is it kind of snapping a picture, so to speak. And that allows you to very accurately track an object, which is critical when you're trying to determine with like 5 nines reliability if a crash is going to happen or not happen.
And I know a little bit about your background. You're leveraging some interesting technology. So can you say a little bit about where this is coming from? I've seen some of the videos.
Yeah, one of my co-founders founded a company 20 some years ago called Artis. And they've done a lot of work for DARPA and the Army on what they call active protection systems. And these are sensor-based systems that are mounted on light armored vehicles, and they detect incoming missiles and rockets and shoot them down before they blow up the vehicle.
Yeah, so if you can do something at 600 miles an hour, it's not as hard. Not that it's not hard to see a car coming, but yeah, that's pretty neat. So I imagine that this is a technology you've been using with the military. Are there any complexities involved in trying to commercialize something that's coming from that direction?
So we're not actually using any of Artis's technology at this time. We leverage their kind of know-how and maybe some of the IP early on. But since then, we have developed entirely our own software and hardware solutions. And so there's no issues with military. Put it this way, our products can be sold anywhere in the world without any restrictions.
Yeah, that's important. And that's also interesting and important because it's clear that you identified a problem and then you got technology to go over and adapt to solving the problem, as opposed to trying to take this technology and cram it into to be a solution. That's always interesting to see somebody be able to pivot. I think we've covered kind of your advantage and how you're leveraging it. If we get just on the general topic of entrepreneurship, I'm curious, what's the most significant or surprising challenge that you found as an entrepreneur, just moving forward?
Well, I wouldn't say it was surprising, but the most challenging thing is, to use an analogy, it's like a boxer who keeps getting hit and knocked down, and you have to, bounce back up time and time again. That's the difference. I've done a lot of startups. This is the first time I've been the CEO and founder, and you every day, you're taking hits. You have 1 hour you think, oh my God, we could sell the company for billions, and then the next hour you're like, oh my God, we'll never make it, and stuff like that. That's a daily occurrence for a startup CEO. So that's the challenging part, is dealing with that day in and day out.
That resilience. That's something that I see with in startups that survive. Right, you got to be able to bounce back up. So you mentioned before that this isn't your first startup. So can you say a little bit about your background then, as how you came into this as being a CEO and founder?
Sure. I've been a car guy my whole life. I started work out of UCLA with a tier one supplier to the auto industry. And then I went to Honda Motor, and I was there for some time. And then kind of during the dot-com days, I jumped from the big corporate world to a startup, and I've never looked back. I've done probably 7 startups in the last 20 plus years, and love it. All but one were in the auto tech space. So a lot of connected car, IoT type stuff.
Well, you said you've always been interested in cars, so let me pursue that, because I like to figure out a little bit about what people's background, and way I usually pose this is, what did you want to be when you were a kid?
Well, that's an interesting question. I really don't recall. I wasn't like the typical kid that had I want to be a superhero or a fireman or whatever. I don't really recall ever having those thoughts, but kind of from junior high to high school, I always wanted to be like a corporate executive. I'm like, I want to climb the corporate ladder, work for a giant Fortune 500 company as an executive. That was kind of my goal. And that's what I started out to do, after UCLA. As I told you, once I left the corporate world, I never looked back. I don't think it was, it's not all it was cracked up to be.
So what's the particular appeal then? That's an interesting choice. You had no desire to look back. So yeah, what's the major appeal?
Right now, it's the ability to, do kind of whatever you want, and actually we can go into a meeting, and I can have my company pivot tomorrow if I wanted to, just totally change direction, generally don't do that, but it's the ability to just see a problem and fix it, or see a market opportunity and go after it the next day. It's not like the big corporate world where it's just, meetings and bureaucracy and reports and, okay, 6 months later, maybe you get to do something different.
And actually, you've talked about having some other startups. So what was your exit there? Because you can either keep going with the startup as they grow, but what was your choice then?
Generally, I think all but one company was acquired or sold or something like that. So that's where, I then kind of exited myself. So like at Jasper Wireless, we were acquired by Cisco for $1.5 billion. And again, Cisco's a giant company, not really the best fit for me. So then I left and went to another startup as, chief sales officer, I think at that point, same thing, so most of the exits, we've been acquired. And so it's time to move on.
I guess, and this may go a little bit in the wrong direction. We'll see where it goes. But you mentioned your background as well. This, what were you studying that put you in the mindset of becoming this Fortune 500 person? And then does any of that, how does that play into what you're doing now as a CEO? Or did you just burn the bridge?
The second half is easy. It has nothing to do with what I'm doing now. So, I went to UCLA on an engineering scholarship, but after a couple of years, I realized I didn't think engineering, being an engineer was what I wanted to do. So I pivoted more to econ and finance and was going to go, more in the investment banking, finance, that sort of thing. So that obviously lends itself to big company environments and that. So that's how I went down that path.
Just kind of wrapping up here, just fill in the blank for me. Entrepreneurs are,
I was going to say a little unbalanced, but probably a bad way of.
Go for it. Yeah.
Like you have to be not a little crazy either, but it's not for everybody, so.
Yeah. Entrepreneurs are a little crazy. That's the first time I got that. And I totally get it. That's a great one. Okay. And the other one to put you on the spot is in 10 words or less, if just some closing advice to the listeners on entrepreneurship, 10 words or less, what would you say?
This is one of the things that I had to learn as a CEO founder was you can't do it all yourself. Remember that, you have friends and family that can help you through the more challenging times. So I know that's more than 10 words, but remember it's not just yourself,
Yeah. Entrepreneurs are a little crazy. You can't do it all yourself. Be prepared for bad events in your life and be resilient. I think that's all fantastic advice to be giving our listeners today. And on that note, I think that I have wrapped up the things that I want to squeeze out of you today. For our viewers, we're going to wrap this up. Again, this is the Next Core Forward Faster podcast. We hope that you will like and subscribe to our channel, and we look forward to seeing you next time.